Yeah.
But there's no contract at all.
Doesn't matter. I can make a contract with you, and if you don't deny it, it's an implied contract.
But what if I don't acquiesce to them, to this law?
Everyone has acquiesced.
You have. You can say, what if I don't? But have you put it in writing? Have you sent it to them?
Who's them?
The fictitious system created by the Vatican.
Yeah, no.
If you haven't rebutted your unum sanctum, you have to do whatever they say, because they own you.
Well, they think they do through the fiction.
No, they've claimed your soul.
Yeah, but they can't take my soul.
No, they're not wanting to take your soul. They're claiming ownership of it. There's a difference. And if you don't rebut that, then they do. And that's why this whole system is created. And they've been running it for 2,000 years.
They only own the fictitious person, not the real person.
That's the reality, is because you've signed over ownership when the placenta
And
was
this-
debated.
But how
It's
do
so
you
much
sign
bullshit
that?
because that percent is just going to rot and I think it's in a week's time it'll be gone. It'll be
Stillborn.
thrown in the rubbish or whatever.
Yeah, but they've created a trust account. The trust account is real.
Yeah, they're saying it's worth 250, but who's going to buy it for $240,000?
They don't.
No idea how much.
They're not worth, it's not about that. It's about trading what they say it's worth. What's an apple worth? You can buy an apple 50 cents, but the stock of the Apple company is tradable. That's not real. Their whole world is fictitious. They don't take ownership of the placenta to sell placentas. They take ownership of the placenta to create trusts and bonds that they can trade.
Well, what happens if someone dies then?
Well, usually they die.
Someone dies.
Okay.
Well, they bet the bond.
I know where you're going. So, what happens to the trust account
Yeah.
when someone dies?
Yeah.
Okay, this is what's supposed to happen. The beneficiary is supposed to get the money. So when you die, you make a will,
Yeah.
and your possessions go to someone, or what you think are your possessions. That's why it's all about probate. The difference between creating a will under their system and just you as a living woman making a will is very, very different, because the government can't get their hands on it.
Yeah.
But who's got this? Who's got a copy of birth certificate? Okay. Is it a 1-page or 2-page document? Look at mine. Mine has another page. Did you ask for a copy of the birth certificate? Then you got the birth certificate. If you ask for a copy of the entire paperwork concerning the birth certificate, you get this page.
Something out of the box.
There's something down the bottom here.
Oh, barcodes.
Barcodes. Do you
They
notice
were
how?
around. They were around.
And look how many of them there are.
Sorry.
There's 3 barcodes. How many trust accounts do they create? 3. That's the 3 trust accounts. When you think of a barcode, let's say I go down to the shop, I get 2 litres of milk, I come back and they scan the barcode. What does the barcode mean?
The product account.
Like
It's a product. It's a product. Now, do you know why it's called a barcode? It's a bit obvious, isn't it? It's because, why?
Made of bars.
No, that's where they deceive you. Because it's not written small case BARCODE. It's written capital B, capital R code. That's not English. That's dogmatic. It's an acronym. Guess what BAR is?
Is that the bar attorneys or something like that?
British Accreditation Registry.
Yeah.
And it's a registry for all things to do with commerce. That's why lawyers swear an oath to the bar, because they're working in the property market. This is about product and trade. So if I submit just this to a court, they're going to laugh at you. Because they know this is the placenta. And you're saying, I'm the living woman. You don't exist in their system anyway. And here's this thing that doesn't exist, holding up a birth certificate that is totally legal, that's referring to a placenta, which you think is you. You're crazy. But then you show this. And you go, I know exactly what I'm talking about, Your Honour, because not only do I have that other side, but I also have this. I'll pass it around for you to have a look.
What do you ask for again? The whole document?
All pages
All pages.
concerning the birth certificate. And if they only send you one back, you say, sorry, you haven't sent me the full documents. So here's what you do. You get those barcode numbers and you go to a site like Treasury Direct, which is in America. Treasury Direct has a list of all bonds created from trust accounts. You punch the numbers in. And it's got $25 bonds, $50 bonds and $100 bonds, all the way up to $10,000 bonds. You punch the number into all of that. Lo and behold, there's $30,000, $80,000, $90,000 of bonds just for this one. And by the time you've punched in all of those numbers on all of the different bonds, it adds up to something like $10 million. And that's just those ones. Because they're trading it. And just like stock, your value goes up. And here's how your value goes up. If you get a job, you're paying tax. And the tax is going into their system, so you're a good product to own. But if you're a toilet cleaner, you only make this much, so the value of your property only goes up a little bit. But if you get a job $5 million a year as an executive, the value of your stock goes up dramatically. If you were born in England and you come out here to Australia, then the owners in England will sell the stock to the owners in Australia. Because then they can make money out of you through bank accounts. Now we're going to start to get into how deep is this fraud. So you understand how they've created the fraud and how they're starting to implement it. Because everything that they do has nothing to do with you, the living man or the living woman. You're not in their system. It's all to do with your trust accounts. In particular, people know it as the SECAV or SECAV Trust. You all heard that before? We'll just write it here. Yeah. SECAV. The actual pronounce is SECAV.
Okay.
But people see SECAV Trust. Doesn't matter. As long as you know what we're talking about, it's all that matters. So through these trust accounts, how many of you have heard that that's your money in the SECAV Trust? It's worth millions and millions of dollars. People say, it's my money, I want to get to it. It's not your money, Ralph. Whose money is it?
The Pope's.
The Pope's money. Did they like you taking his money? No. They in fact want you.
But you can claim it.
You can't per se claim it. What you can do is you can, as an executor, because you're the beneficiary, you're always the beneficiary because they can't change that. As you're the beneficiary, you can, as an executor, agree for payments to be made out of it to any other account. You discharge debt by, there's several ways you can do it. You can simply write offer accepted, payment authorised, matter settled under equity of law, and you send a copy of that with a notice of direction and instruction to the Registrar General who created this, and his job is to pay it. You can do it that way, there's another way. But how do you get the whole sum? Because it's not your money. And a lot of people think that they can get this money.
Well, it's a bank account that you can access through the Vatican.
It's a bank account that you can access, but you can only access it as the executor. You can't access it as the beneficiary as yet until you do something.
You take control of your soul then.
Well, you have to take control of your soul first and foremost. The only way you can access this is as the executor, you send a death certificate reinforcing that the entity is dead, and you as the executor instruct the trustee to pay out the beneficiary.
How do you send a death certificate of something that doesn't exist?
Well, it's already dead.
Yeah.
All you're doing is going to confirm that it's dead.
How do you do
There's a
that?
guy in Queensland, he actually sent a notice of suicide. He said that this entity has committed suicide and he witnessed it fall off the shelf. I'm serious. And it's dead. Okay? They know it's dead, but no one has told them that. And you, as the executor, don't exist over here. So you have to claim the position as executor and make these things, and everything must happen in paper.
Well, you actually are the beneficiary. And
You are the
executor.
beneficiary.
The state, they're the beneficiary under a presumption in Vatican law.
That's right, they make presumptions. The reason they make presumptions is because you don't state fact. They make all these implied contracts because you haven't stated fact. So if you go into a court and you say, I'm the living man, living woman, they take no notice of you because they can't deal with you, you're ignorant. But if you come in and you say, as the executor of this entity, you have a responsibility to me, who's sitting on there, as the trustee, to do what I say. You work for me.
You can appoint them as your fiduciary.
They have a fiduciary responsible. But here's the thing, this is why I've been trained mine. There is a difference between the local court in lowercase and the local court in capital letters. The local court in lowercase, and there's legislation that creates the space in which all people may bring disputes. But the guy who sits behind the bench, he works for this private corporation. And he requires your approval to sit there. You say, I don't give any consent or agreement to anyone from your private corporation presiding over the business issues that I am partaking in. And here's what it says. And if you haven't got a copy of this, look it up and grab a copy. It's the bench book, Magistrates Court bench book. In New South Wales, I think it's called the Local Court Magistrates Bench Book or something like that. This is their private book. And it says, if any party does not agree, does not understand, you must not proceed. Because they require your permission. But if you don't say anything and you accept their paperwork and you turn up, what have you done?
Consent.
You've consented, you've agreed. So before even you go into court, you send them all of this sort of paperwork. You send them a notice of mistake. Oh, there seems to be some mistake here. You're making a claim against a fictional dead entity. And there's a maximum of law that says action ceases with the death of the person. When the person dies, there's no action. Well, there could be no action against the person. But you don't know that, so you don't claim it. Here's another one they do. And you might have had this before. Go to court and it's got accused versus informant. Anyone had that? Accused versus informant? Wait a minute. When did the accused bring them out of court? The first named is the one bringing it to court. The first named has the responsibility to prove their claim. Well, what's your claim? That you didn't do it. How can you prove you didn't do something? So you're presumed guilty. So you have to say to them, notice of mistake, you need to swap the order. They go, oh. And if they don't amend the record, underneath that it says failure to amend the record will be an admission of willful fraud. So you give them the choice. You fix it or you're admitting the fraud that I know you're creating. So we've got methodologies here. And the next thing we can throw into the court is an interlocutory. Now, most people don't know what an interlocutory is. But I'm going to give you the foundations under which you deal with all of this stuff. And I'm sort of just giving you the bare bones of this. The more you get into it, the more you get the detail, the more empowered you get to become. So, it's a three-cornered, stable. If you've only got two things, you can fall over. You need three. You need your affidavit, because that's the most powerful thing in their system. It's your safety net before you walk across the tightrope, because it's the contract. The next thing you have is the interlocutory. So if they try to take you to court, it's not you they're taking. You file an interlocutory. An interlocutory is a document you file with any court in any proceeding at any time if there's a question of law. And in it, you say, please define where you claim to have your authority to hear my matter. Where does the police claim to have their authority to arrest me? And that's where I'm going to get into here in cops in a minute. And the matter cannot proceed until those points of law are addressed. A magistrate does not have the authority to deal with points of law. It must go to a judge. Has to go to a judge on points of law. They will try to fob you off. Oh, I ignore your documents. Your documents are irrelevant. Whenever they say that, thank you, Your Honour. Under equity of law, I can take the position that all of your documents are irrelevant as well, which means you have empty pieces of paper. So all these ways. We don't fight their system. What's the point? You can't win. But you can use their system against them. Make them accountable by their own rules and regulations. They don't like it at all. So what's the third thing that we have here? The third thing is the lien process, or sometimes called the common lien process, because it works in the realm of the living man or woman. And it's simply their system turned back on them. You've just done this. Under the terms of my affidavit, you've broken our agreement. So here's an invoice for $1.2 million. You have 28 days to pay it. In solid silver, at the police station that I want to go to at the front. You've got 10 days to challenge it. By an affidavit stating exactly why each item on it is incorrect. Guess what happens? They ignore it. They ignore the invoice. 28 days come, we send them our reminder notice. Ever had a reminder notice from such and such? That's their process. And in the reminder notice, I say to them, you have, by not addressing it the first time, you've admitted the invoice is correct. Now I've given you a grace period of 14 days to pay the invoice. And the invoice also accrues 5% per month cumulative if you don't pay it. Guess what they do now? They ignore it. So then I serve them a final notice. You know how they say? When you get the first notice, you get the reminder notice, then they serve you a final notice. All happens in 3 weeks. We're just now using their system. Here is your final notice, which is a notice of action. You have 5 days to pay this, or I'm going to instigate a commercial lien. They don't pay it. So you instigate a commercial lien process. And a commercial lien is you take all of the stuff you've done, and you put an affidavit saying, I've served them this, I've served them that, they didn't respond, and you take it to a court of record.